Good day and welcome to our presentation that is about happiness. I am Ilish Gabriel Santiago.
I am Hannah M. Rubio.
And Janet K. of Padre Mitayan.
So for our table of contents, it contains objectives, our content, and it's composed of introduction to happiness, defining happiness, payoffs of happiness, promotion of happiness, and then there's also story illustration, biblical insights, conclusion, and reference. Next slide. For our objectives, number one is to provide comprehensive definition of happiness. Number two is to provide numerous consequences of happiness. And the last one is to introduce ways to increase one's happiness.
So as we move on, happiness is a positive emotional state that is subjectively defined by each person. The term is rarely used by scientific studies because there is a little consensus on its meaning. So there are two definitions of happiness. First is the age-old definition of happiness, and the second one is the 21st century definition of happiness. In an old age definition, Aristotle believed that eudaimonia or happiness is based on a lifelong pursuit of meaningful developmental life goals that is doing what is worth doing was the key to the good life. So America's founders reasoned that the pursuit of happiness was just as important as our inalienable rights of life and liberty. There are three theories of happiness. First is the need or goal satisfaction theories. It was theorized that we are happy because we have reached our goals, such as happiness as satisfaction, makes happiness a target of our psychological pursuits. The second one is the process activity theories. In this process activity camp, theorists posit that engaging in particular life activities generate happiness. And the third one is the genetic personality predisposition theories, that those who emphasizes these theories, happiness tend to see happiness as stable. So the scholars whose ideas about well-being are more consistent with Aristotle's views on eudaimonia believe that happiness and well-being are not synonymous. Eudaimonia comprises happiness and meaning, stated in a simple formula that is well-being equals happiness plus the meaning. In the second definition of happiness, modern Western psychology has focused primarily on a post-materialistic view of happiness that emphasizes pleasure, satisfaction, and life meaning. Seligman suggests that a pleasant and meaningful life can be built on happiness that results from using our psychological strengths. In describing a new model of happiness, Lyubomirsky and colleagues proposes that a person's chronic happiness level is governed by three major factors. First is a genetically determined set point for happiness. Second is the happiness relevant circumstantial factors. And the last is the happiness relevant activities and practices. Lyubomirsky and colleagues incorporates what is known about the genetic component, the circumstantial demographic determinants of happiness, and the complex process of intentional human change.
So for the consequences of happiness, an ever-expanding body of research suggests that happiness is not only the phenomenological experience of good, but it is also has wide-ranging individual and societal benefits in domains including physical health, social relationships, productivity, and pro-sociality. For the first one, health and longevity. According to various studies, happiness is associated with health and longevity. Work examining the causal direction of these relationships suggests that positive moods improve physiological health indicators such as cortisol, blood pressure, and immune system parameters, whereas negative emotions have detrimental effects on cardiovascular, immune, and endocrine system functioning. Positive emotion seems to help these systems. At the cardiovascular level, a number of studies suggest happiness relates to healthier hearts. For example, positive feelings correlate with healthier heart rate variability and lower ambulatory heart rate. Conversely, positive emotions protect against cardiovascular disease, are associated with lower rates of strokes in senior citizens, and negatively predicted heart disease risk in prospective study. Causally, positive mood induction following a stressful experience brought participants' cardiovascular systems back to baseline more quickly compared to controls. Subjective well-being or happiness is also related to stronger immune function and recovery processes. For example, participants exposed to a cold virus experience more cold symptoms measured with various objective markers including mucus production and congestion if they were low in positive feelings at the beginning of the study. Happiness is also related to surviving fatal diseases such as end-stage renal disease, recurrent breast cancer, and spinal cord injuries for longer periods of time. Happier people are more likely to engage in healthy behaviors such as eating a healthier diet, exercising more, seatbelt use, and lower rates of smoking. Lastly, a number of subsequent studies have shown that subjective well-being or happiness relates to a longer life. So for the second one is social relationships. Happier people spend more time socializing and engaging in social activities than less happy people and are more popular and likable. Diner and Seligman in 2002 found that the happiest 10% of a sample were all highly social rather, and had the strongest social and romantic relationship than less happy people. In experiments, participants who are induced to be in a positive mood compared to negative or neutral moods are more sociable with the confederate, see new people as more likable, and express greater social interests such as being with friends or going to a party. The effects of happiness on sociability extend to the existence, quality, and duration of romantic relationships as well. Longitudinal work demonstrating the link between happiness and marriage suggests that happier people are more likely to become married, be happy in those marriages, stay married, and in the event of a divorce, to be remarried again. This does not mean that romantic relationships will always lead to greater happiness, as there are also critical moderating factors such as the quality of the relationship. Research on single people also suggests that marriage is not essential to happiness. And for the third one is productivity. It says here that happier people are more likely to hold better jobs, those that were rated by observers as having more autonomy, meaning, and variety. Happier people are also more satisfied with their jobs, and job satisfaction has important consequences for job related outcomes. Lastly, happier workers are also better negotiators as positive emotions promote cooperation and collaboration rather than withdrawal or competition in negotiations and tend to reach better joint solution. And lastly is pro-sociality. There is a growing evidence as well that subjective well-being is linked to pro-sociality. Happiness is associated with the inclination to help others. Furthermore, time spent in a good mood in studies using experience, sampling, or diary methodologies is associated with the amount of time helping others. Happiness is also associated with better citizenship in the workplace. Employees in a good mood are more likely to engage in organizational citizenship behaviors, that is, voluntary behaviors beyond their job requirements, and show lower deviant workplace behaviors such as stealing and inefficiency. Lastly, in one study, inexperienced sales staff members at a department store were more helpful to a customer if their previous interaction with the confederate was pleasant compared to neutral or unpleasant.
Now let's move on to the promotion of happiness. There are sources of happiness. There's actually five. Number one is security. It's our perceived state within our environment, when we tend to feel safe and away from the threat. Number two is our outlook. Having a positive outlook and our thinking is an approach to unpleasantness in a positive and productive way. Number three is our autonomy. It refers to our self-governance and our responsibility to control our lives. Number four is relationships. It's basically the relationship that we build with other people. And last one is the skilled and meaningful activities that we do. These activities can be anything that is simple, intentional, and regular practices that meant to mimic the myriad healthy thoughts and behaviors associated with being naturally happy. Next one. Now, how do we apply increasing happiness to our personal lives? Number one is realizing that enduring happiness doesn't come from success. People adapt to changing circumstances, even to wealth or a disability. Thus, wealth is like health. Its utter absence breeds misery, but having it or any circumstances we long for doesn't guarantee happiness. Number two is let's take control of our time. Happy people feel in control of their lives, often aided by mastering their use of time. This can be in a way of breaking down our goals for the week and setting our goals within each day to accomplish those tasks. Number three is to act happy. We can sometimes act ourselves into a frame of mind, manipulated into a smiling expression. People feel better. When they scroll, the whole world seems to scroll back. So put on a happy face. Talk as if you feel positive, self-esteem, are optimistic, and are outgoing. Going through the motions can trigger the emotions of that can guarantee happiness. Number four is seek work and leisure that engage your skills. Happy people often are in the zone called flow, absorbed in a task that challenges them without overwhelming them. The most expensive forms of leisure often provide less flow experience than gardening, socializing, or craft work. Number five is engage in physical activities. There's numerous studies that suggest how being physically active, having a good fitness and health can promote or is an antidote for negative mood disturbances. Number six is have a good night rest. Give your body the sleep that it wants. Happy people live active, vigorous lives, yet reserve time for renewing sleep and solitude. Many people suffer from a sleep debt, with resulting fatigue, diminished alertness, and gloomy moods. Number seven is keep a gratitude journal. Those who pause each day to reflect on some positive aspect of their lives, like their health, friends, family, freedom, education, senses, natural surroundings, and so on, experience heightened well-being. And lastly is nurture your spiritual self. For many people, faith provides a support community, a reason to focus beyond the self, and a sense of purpose and hope. Study after study suggests that actively religious people are happier and that they cope better with crisis. Next one, please. For workplace application, number one is to start a work meeting with positive comments about peers' contribution. This may not only increase their happiness or feeling positive, but it can also influence the environment within the workplace that can generate creativity and good teamwork. Number two is seek healthy challenges within the workplace, stretching your abilities just a bit beyond your comfort zone to realize your potential. Next one. And lastly is societal and community applications. Focus beyond the self and help others. Reach out to those who are in need. Happiness increase helpfulness, but doing good also make one feel good. Number two is give priority to close relationships. Intimate friendships with those who care deeply about you can help you weather difficult times. Confiding is good for soul and the body. Resolve to nurture your closest relationships. Do not take those closest to you for granted, to display to them the sort of kindness that you display to others, to affirm them, to play together and share together, to rejuvenate your affections, resolve in such ways to act lovingly. Number three is basically be kind to those who you love and tell them that you love them. Number four is help others to find time to play. Number five is engage in random acts of kindness. And number six is to mind others with compassion and empathy. Next one. Now let's move on to story illustration. This is about the happiest American is still Hawaiian, Jewish, and chill. This story is about Alvin Wong, who received a call from the New York Times 3 years ago. After asking him a questions about his demographic background, the excited reporter on the line gave Wong a piece of news that would upend his life. He was the happiest man in America. His first response to that was utter disbelief. Who would ever have thought you're sitting around in your house and someone says, "You're the happiest guy"? Wong said, "I said, is this a practical joke that you guys are playing on me?" The reporter, Catherine Rumpel, wasn't kidding. The New York Times had asked Gallup, the polling firm, to assemble a statistical composite of the happiest person in America, based on its 2011 report on Americans' well-being. Gallup's data painted a surprising picture. The hypothetical happiest American would be a tall Asian American man over 65 years old who lives in Hawaii, is married with children, owns a business, earns a household income of more than 120,000 per year, and is an observant Jew. In other words, Alvin Wong. The 5'10" Honolulu senior citizen was born to Chinese parents, is happily married, and has 2 children. He is also a convert to Judaism. Wong is active in his synagogue and keeps a kosher home. At the time, he runs his own healthcare management business and earned more than 120,000 per year. The next day, the Times published a small article about Wong, noting that by his own admission, he was indeed a very happy person. Overnight, Wong became a celebrity in Hawaii and received worldwide media coverage. For 6 months, his phone rang off the hook, with calls coming in from the likes of Good Morning America and ABC World News. He has appeared on television and radio more than times that he can count. A short independent film released in 2013, The Happiest Person in America, was inspired by his story. He called me one day and said, "Somebody just told me I went viral. What does that mean?" His daughter, Sharoni Wong, related. All the attention led Wong, now 72, to start contemplating his own sunny disposition and to check out academic research on happiness. Determined to share his happiness with others, he decided to lecture on the art of contentedness. He has become a kind of happiness guru. "I've taken this on now as a life mission to explain what happiness is all about," he said.
3 years after his selection, the speaking invitations still roll in. Wong appears regularly at the many professional conventions held in Honolulu. He has spoken to school children, University of Hawaii donors, and the Hawaii chapter of Hadassah. When the forward called for an interview, Wong was preparing to address the Hawaii State Senate during its daily moment of contemplation. In the coming weeks, will be featured on a PBS program about prominent Hawaiians. But Wong says he has declined book dealer offers and he does not accept money for his speaking appearances. He is not interested in making money on his fame. "If I didn't volunteer and I was doing it as a business, I wouldn't be happy. As happy would I," Wong said. His newfound title also brought a twinge of sadness. Many of the people who call him are not reporters, but unhappy people trying to discover his secret. "We get all these calls from India, Thailand, Russia, England, and they're asking the same question. What is the secret of your happiness?" he said. "It made me unhappy in the sense that everyone was looking for the secret for happiness. It was eye-opening," Wong said. Sometimes scholars can be obnoxious too. A rabbi once called and spent 30 minutes lecturing Wong on why Jews could not possibly be the happiest religious group because of their tragic history. Wong listened politely. "I never hung up, and that's rude," Wong said. Wang says that this sort of humility is the key to his happiness. Humility teaches me that I don't know everything, that I am not the most important person. He said, if you don't listen, you are not going to learn anything. Since 2008, Gallup and Healthways, a health and well-being improvement company, have conducted a survey that indirectly enshrined Wong. It technically measures not happiness, but well-being, including basic needs like financial security, physical and emotional health, and access to food and shelter. Jews have ranked consistently as the religious group with the highest well-being since the survey began, even when controlling for other key factors like income and age. Wang flirted with Catholicism as a young man and did not become a member of the happiest tribe until he was in his 30s, before marrying his wife. But his Jewish identity plays an important part role in fostering the humility he says he needs to be happy. Said Wang, Judaism teaches us that your heaven or hell is made here on earth by the deeds you do. People will miss you or not miss you. Their thoughts about you is how you are remembered. If that doesn't keep you grounded, I don't know what will. According to the survey, greater religious observance is tied to higher well-being across all religions, including Judaism. But the survey did not define observance. Rumpel needed to find an observant Jew, and she decided that Wong fit the bill after learning that he keeps a kosher home. Catherine Rumpel said, I don't know what observant means, but we'll consider that since you are kosher, you are an observant Jew, Wong related. Wong is not Sabbath observant according to traditional Jewish law and does not attend services on a weekly basis. Still, he considers himself observant, though he accepts that others might not. There's degree of being observant, he said. You may have different interpretations. Wong says he feels most comfortable in the conservative movement and attends Sof Ma'arab, the westernmost conservative synagogue in the world. The Wong's Passover and Hanukkah parties are well known in the Jewish community and for good reason. Wong estimates that he and his wife owns 96 menorahs, which are proudly displayed during the holiday.
Still, Wong finds he must be assertive in demonstrating his Jewish identity because he is Asian American. When you say I am a Jewish, a lot of people here in Hawaii think, well, you're Caucasian and that's it, he said. They don't realize that you're referring to a religion and not an ethnic group. One of the wellspring that sustains Wong's happiness is the straightforward but optimistic view of setbacks. From high school breakups to deaths in the family to the time he nearly died as a 6-month-old during the Pearl Harbor attacks. He rarely broods over anything. I guess my attitude has always been, you've got to go forward, he said. When you have a failure, when you have something that happens to you that is traumatic, what you have to do is learn from it, but move on and not let that happen again. He attributes his attitude to the values he embedded while growing up in post-war Hawaii, where Asian cultural norms of respect and humility were highly valued. Today, he feels his Asian and Jewish backgrounds complement with each other. When I was converted, my mom said Judaism is one of the oldest culture in the world, and the Chinese culture is too. He said, there was never a sense of clashing of the two cultures. Another key to happiness, according to Wong, is learning to laugh at yourself. Happiness is I don't think too of myself too seriously. He said, if you can laugh at yourself, at all your problems, mistakes, then you're going to go through life a very unhappy person. This has always been my philosophy. Family members says Wong continues to laugh at himself and remains humble despite his pain, but they like to help make sure he stays that way. I reminded him that happy was maybe not the brightest of the seven dwarfs. Sharon is Wong said. So for the biblical insight, we all want to be happy, yet finding happiness may be difficult at times. We frequently look for it in all the wrong places or in all the wrong ways when the solution is much simpler. In Psalms 144, verse 15 says, "Happy are the people whose God is the Lord." Through recognizing the promises in God's word, scriptures lead us to real contentment.
So to sum it all up, happiness has no definite definition. It could be defined as a positive emotion, living a meaningful life, or it could be satisfaction and pleasure. Various philosophers and psychologists gave their own definition of happiness. It is very subjective, and every person could have their own definition of happiness. Meta-analysis reviews, longitudinal researches, and field observations offer evidence that happiness has wide-ranging individual and societal benefits. Moreover, various studies suggested that promoting happiness is an important personal and societal goal. A prerequisite of such pursuits is a working understanding of the sources of happiness. Based on longitudinal studies, every person has their own source of happiness and it could be utilized in various aspects of their lives. Therefore, there is not but one cause of happiness. Rather, genetic, situational, personality, cultural, coping strategies, and goals must be integrated. Lastly, present literature on subjective well-being or happiness does paint a picture of the happy person. This individual has a positive temperament, is optimistic and grounded, does not ruminate unreasonably over negative events, is living in an economically developed society, has social confidence, and has necessary resources to progress toward valued goals. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening. We hope you have learned a thing or two.